Testing, testing. No, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Alrighty. We're just about getting started here. So if everyone could take their seats, that'd be great. Looks like everyone's almost in their seats. Hi. How's it going? Yeah, all right. Maybe. There are a couple chairs over there.
There might be
In the front, in the very front. Hey, Jono, are there seats up front or no?
all the way up front.
Right there. Two right there?
There.
One? Okay, well, no, I have enough. Yeah, sure. Okay. All right. Next time. Okay. Are we good? We're good? Yep. All righty. Where's Adam? Good. All right, we're going to get started here. Martina will be coming up.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Show Fields. My name is Martina. I'm the Events and Programming Manager for Show Fields. So a little bit about us is we are an experiential retail pop-up store for e-commerce brands. And we have events running every week. You're more than welcome to take a look at our website for the events that we have coming up. And I will turn it over to David from Biohack the World.
Woo!
All right, thank you so much, Martina. I want to invite my co-host tonight. We're doing something very special and different. We have a co-host. So usually it was just me coming up here talking about Biohack the World and biohacking, but I have registered dietitian extraordinaire, but she's a functional dietitian. I want to make that distinction.
Thank you.
All right, Michelle Shapiro, come
Hi,
on
guys.
up.
Thank you for the distinction.
Of course. Are you mic'd up? Is your mic working?
What do you think, Stefan?
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Woo!
People get here.
I hear you through there. Yep, I hear
Okay, great. We're on.
Hello, Pam.
We're live. All right, cool. So we thought we were just gonna kind of have a free-flowing conversation about protein, because that's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about protein. And we have a functional dietitian with us who's been on a very interesting journey herself. I think a lot of us have tried different dietary patterns. I was once vegan for like 8 months. Didn't work out for me, but she did it. Michelle, tell us a little bit about your health journey, your diet, and how you've been sourcing protein.
I see, by the way, so many familiar faces in here. So if you've heard this story again, I apologize, but I'm going to put a different spin on it so it's at least a little more fun and fresh. So about now, how long is it? How old am I? About 15 years ago, I started going on a health journey where I had always occupied a larger body when I was younger and drastically decided to lose weight before going to college. I grew up in Queens, New York, which is a super diverse place, and realized when
Queens.
Yeah, Queens in the house.
Queens.
Yeah, Queens. It's Queens. Bayside area. Amazing. We'll talk. Exactly. Bell Boulevard. We'll talk. David too. We're both from Queens. Exactly.
Yes, Bayside.
We
Yes,
went
I
to
went to
the same
Cardozo High School.
which is
Yes.
amazing.
We went to the
Years
same
apart.
high school.
Which is so cool.
It's No, I went to Cardozo.
Dozo.
Sorry, this is not about. All right.
So it's always about Queens. In going to, I went to the University of Delaware, and I knew while going to school that I was going to have to probably lose weight pretty rapidly before I went to school, because people aren't as I would say, accepting, or it's a much more homogenous place in so many ways. So I was like, all right, I've kind of lived this awesome life in Queens, occupied a larger body, never really impacted my life. And then I said, when I'm going away to college, I really want to lose weight because people aren't going to know me. And for me, it was just like a kind of societal barrier. So I rapidly, and trigger warning, lost 100 pounds in like 3 months. Do not recommend, because what followed was, and that was adopting a vegan diet, which for me was just really like thinly veiled eating disorder. It was just like, I can cut out all these food groups and it'll be easier to explain to people why I'm not eating things. Recovered from that. But in the years that followed, and I followed that vegan diet for over 10 years, and I'm the type of person, I know David's the type of person, when we say we're doing something, like all of us biohackers are, We want to see it to completion, and we want to do it right and perfect. So the more perfect I was kind of as a vegan, the more nutrient deficiencies, thyroid dysfunction, gut dysfunction that I experienced. Now that's not true for every vegan, and we're definitely going to talk about that tonight too.
Absolutely. Yes, we're going to get into all of that. But
yeah.
so I want to know more about like how you discovered, or how did you transition from veganism to, and why, to being an omnivore?
Yeah, so it's actually really powerful. I have a friend who's a functional dietitian. We've been friends a long time. And she works distinctly with fertility and women's hormones. And she will not accept clients in her practice who do not eat meat. Because she says for her, she feels it's worse than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. And she says, I can't promote health in a body that's nutrient deficient. I can slam you with all the supplements you want. You're not gonna get there without, you know, extreme supplementation. And when she said that to me, it really registered in my head that these health issues I was having, like HPA axis dysregulation, thyroid dysfunction, were coming back to this baseline nutrient deficiency.
Right.
So,
and this is why it didn't work out for me, because I was trying to get stronger, I was trying to get bigger, but it's such a mystery to know exactly how much protein is in every single food that you're eating, unless you're tracking and measuring. I mean, who really does that, right, on a daily basis? Besides us.
Exactly.
And that's why
and
you need us biohackers to do this for you.
Everyone in this audience.
But even then, it's so personalized, right? So like my protein needs are totally different from yours and from someone who's a couch potato versus somebody who's training every day, right? So you have to be a sleuth about how and where you get your protein, and like you have to get regular blood labs and self-quantification, like trackers and this sort of thing. So it didn't work out for me, but I found so for a while after the pandemic hit, I was jumping on this carnivore thing, right? And I did that for 2 years, and it worked great. I was nose to tail carnivore. I loved
you had the time of your life. Yeah, he loved talking about it. You're very passionate.
Yes, but I did miss carbs. So I love rice. It's just white rice, so good.
It's so low toxin,
so
amazing though. The biohacker's dream, white rice.
So
it is.
I allowed myself steak and a little bit of rice. Anyway, so it got a little monotone. It got a little boring. Anyway, these days I figured out how to make my own protein shakes that have essential amino acids. So we're going to talk about engineered diet, right? How do you be a successful vegan? You have to be a sleuth. You have to engineer your diet. You have to know exactly what food to pair and this sort of thing in order to get all your nutrients, right? So I have these protein shakes now, essential amino acids. There's whey in it, there's collagen, there's moringa and hemp and chia seeds. Anyway, this thing, I know I'm getting all the protein that I need. So this is...
You feel covered by that, and that you don't have to sleuth in the actual food you're eating, because you have some coverage, essentially.
I have coverage. I have the assurance to know that every time I'm eating a meal, I know I'm hitting my protein numbers. Not only that, the other benefit is that like 50% less going to the market, 50% less going and buying meat from the farm. Because I'm like...
Just less eating overall for you.
Less chewing, less eating, a lot more drinking. It's very convenient.
So this is a really good point you're bringing up too, which is that if you have an extremely well-planned vegan diet, it's doable. You can get there, but you're probably going to need, even the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which I wouldn't take too many recommendations from, still will tell you that you need a well-planned vegetarian or vegan diet to meet your nutrient needs. Yep. It is just harder. It's so much harder to do that, especially with protein needs. But
very inconvenient.
If anyone is currently vegan, this is not a vegan bashing thing,
and
certainly not at all. It's just extra work and a lot of diligence, basically. So it didn't work for us necessarily, but on
the flip side,
yeah, exactly.
The world would be a better place if people ate more vegetables and were kinder to animals and that kind of thing. So,
exactly. Yeah. And I think for some people where accessibility to high quality meat is low, adopting some sort of a regimen like you're explaining, I think is really powerful too. Yeah. Yep. So we both clawed our way back to health using biohacking and functional nutrition.
And it worked.
My functional dietitians over there, exactly. And found that adding protein back into our diets in a really precise and pretty heavy dosed way really promoted health for us. So that's why we're extra excited about these speakers today, because the theme of the night is protein. It's not anti-vegan, it's just pro-protein tonight.
That's right. That's right. And I think we'll end it there, and
Rockin'.
we'll invite
I'll
our
get your
next speaker up.
question. Yes.
So we don't have Kashif Khan tonight.
I promise.
So sorry. I think he's stuck in North Carolina, right, Jono? It's trouble getting around, traveling these days. But we're gonna bring up our great friend, Miss Pamela Gold. Do we have her bio written up? All right, I'm just gonna. So I just want to quickly read about Pamela Gold. Pamela Gold is the founder of PRTL, we call it Portal, formerly Hacked Fitness, NYC's first biohacking fitness studio, and an expert in minimum effective dose fitness, integrative fitness, that's the physical, mental, and energetic aspects of fitness, and also biohacking. I talk to her all the time about biohacking, what are the best biohacks. She's the author of Find More Strength, 5 Pillars to Unlock Unlimited Power and Happiness in 2 Weeks. I read it, great read. I suggest everyone read it. Pam is due for her forthcoming book in 2022, Timeless in Less Time, 12 Weeks to Optimize Fitness for Life. So everyone stay tuned for that. Ladies and gentlemen,
Yes, Pam.
Pamela Gold. Wait, one sec.
I also need a clicker.
We
Clicker.
don't really need a clicker. Don't really need a clicker.
We may advance the slides for her.
It's all good, because I'm actually not talking about protein, and I can project. So either way. But I'm
One
waiting.
sec.
I don't dance, otherwise I could dance.
You don't dance for real?
I mean, I do dance, but I'm not going to dance in front of people. That would be weird.
That was actually pretty good.
Thanks.
What was that? It was like
I
the,
could-
the biohack shuffle, like that.
That whole go down challenge? Yeah.
All right, sorry, we don't have slides yet.
It's okay. I don't need them. It's all good. I flow. So as I already said, I'm super passionate. Is my mic working, or do I need to project? Okay, I don't need to project. So super passionate about biohacking, super passionate about integrated fitness, super passionate about protein, but that isn't actually what I'm talking about tonight, but totally on board for all the pro-protein talk. But what I did want to talk about tonight was integrated fitness, biohacking, and inner strength. And it flows with protein, but if we talk about strength from the inside out, strength from the inside out, that's really what I want to talk about tonight. So integrated fitness, when I talk about that, I'm talking about the physical, mental, and energetic strength that we all have access to. Super passionate about that because originally when I first got into really good shape, similar to the stories that Michelle was sharing, I had a weight loss journey. And the most kind of accessible way for me to kind of turn into the strong person that I wanted to turn into was to get myself into physical shape. And so I did the dieting, I did the workouts, and I got really fit, but it didn't solve all my problems. So mental fitness, and then ultimately that inner strength, the energetic fitness, were really the keys to where I have landed now in terms of what I really prioritize in sharing with people. So as I said, integrated, it's the physical, it's the mental, it's the energetic. How that fits into biohacking is that the way that I define biohacking is that very simply, it's a way that we can all use the latest science, the latest tech, the latest protocols, data to get better results for our biology, and that includes our minds, right? So our mental fitness is very much part of the biohacking journey. So while tonight we're talking about protein, for me, I wanted to share tonight more about mental fitness and mindset. So when we talk about the mental fitness, everything underneath the mental fitness is the energetic fitness. I think we can all appreciate that what we're able to do physically, our mental fitness is what supports that. Because we're not going to get out of bed, we're not going to show up, we're not going to do those extra reps, we're not going to have the discipline to eat the way that we really should be eating to do those workouts. So we have the opportunity to realize that underneath the physical is the mental. And what I firmly believe is that underneath the mental is the energetic. And so when I say energetic fitness, I'm talking about our resilience, I'm talking about our power positivity, talking about our grit, and staying calm under pressure. When things do not go smoothly, like how do you roll with it, right? And what I really feel passionate about is that underneath our mental is this energetic. And there is a way to biohack our energetic fitness. So if I could get to the slide, which I don't know if someone there can, but on the last slide, I wanted to share a hack that I have been working on developing. Thank you. Is that better? Take this. Okay. Basically, the whole thing about biohacking is you can't manage what you don't measure. And so how do we start to tackle this inner strength, this energetic fitness? Is there a way to measure and hack this inner strength component, which for most of us is very nebulous? Like, you wake up in the morning, do you feel inspired? Do you feel positive? You wake up in the morning, you may feel like absolute ass and you don't want to get out of bed. But how do we start to measure that and hack that? And so there's actually a tool that we developed at Portal that was based on David Hawkins' work. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with David Hawkins. He wrote a book called Letting Go. He basically developed 16 levels of consciousness. And basically, I drilled it down into 8 levels. And there's an assessment that we can take where you can get a quantified measure of your inner strength. And with 8 of these levels, 4 of them are catabolic, which when we say catabolic, that's where we're basically breaking down. And it's a defensive position. And we're in a stronger defensive position when we're in the catabolic. But we're not able to contribute to the larger good. And so we're kind of sucking when we're in the catabolic states. But we're in the higher 4 states, the anabolic states, that's when we're able to leave a positive legacy. And so there's actually an assessment that you can take where you can get your everyday power score, and you then can see on an average day where you're at. If you can go to the last slide, I can show it. There you go. Perfect. Oh, nope, not the last. This one. So basically, you can take an assessment and get your score, and your everyday power score will show how much of the time you're in level 1, how much of the time you're in level 2, how much of the time level 3, how much of the time you're in level 4, and then above 5, 6, 7, 8, those are the anabolics. And so we all have all 8 of these levels of energy on any given day. And by understanding what they are, that level 1 is shame and helplessness, where you literally hate life. You just don't want to do it anymore. You want to get off the ride. Level 2 is guilt, fear, and grief. That's where you have a lot of anxiety and blame. Level 3, anger and longing. That's where you really are working to control life. And egoic pride, also controlling life. So you're frustrated and then you're controlling. So all of these levels we all have, but if we're aware of it, we can be mindful and realize that we are dropped down into the lower levels, and we can then use a tool to get ourselves back into the positive levels. And so the higher levels, 5, 6, 7, and 8, that's when we can actually radiate. That's when we can be creative, we can be of service, and we can leave the world better than we found it. And so when we're talking about biohacking and we want to measure this, we have an assessment that you can then have this level of self-awareness, and you can retake the assessment every 6 months, every 3 months, and see how your numbers are changing. And the cool thing is, once you're aware that these levels exist, you can then start to immediately change your behavior, which, thanks to neuroplasticity, the more that you practice pausing, breathing, not acting from these lower levels of consciousness, the more your brain naturally will be wired for you to be brave, for you to be forgiving, for you to be passionate and inspired and in a state of peace. And so it's a tool like all of the biohacking tools that we have available to us, where you can measure, you can assess, you can put a program in place and then see if the program is working. You can optimize. And this being more on the nebulous side is something I'm really passionate about, because while kind of at Portal, the claim to fame is that you can work out for 45 minutes a week and maintain your muscle mass and optimize your cardiovascular fitness, this is something that, to me, the world needs. Because this tool will allow us to go out day to day and be kind and to be of service and go out and spread that instead of spreading asshole. And that's kind of, when you look at the world and what we all need, that's what I'm kind of most passionate about. So that's what this is all about. It's available through Portal, but we're also located in Chelsea. So we're always available for any of the biohacking stuff, as David said, and I have a minute, too, if anyone has any questions about this. Yes? Is there an app for that yet? So on the website, there's a quiz, a type form quiz that you can take, and then you get a report. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you ever, by the way, thank you so much.
Sure.
I think I can speak on behalf of everybody.
Sure.
Up to this point, this is awesome.
Thank you.
I've never seen that diagram. I was
Thank
like,
you.
wow, that's very eye-catchy and stuff.
Thank you. Thank you.
It makes me wonder. I was like going back in time, thinking about certain times that I felt like I was level 2, 3, or 1.
Yeah.
And again, the results.
Yeah, you don't get the results you want in life.
Exactly.
When you act from those lower levels,
Exactly.
it's going to be a learning opportunity where you're going to be like, ooh, that didn't get the result that I intended. I didn't mean to have that blow up. And we look back and you're like, why did I behave that way? Why did I speak like that? It's because we were in the lower levels of power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The question that I had in association with that is, when you determine that you are on a certain level and you wish to get to the next one, obviously the very first step is that you
Self-awareness.
you're awakened, right?
Yep, that you're aware.
You call it what?
Awareness,
just
that you're
awareness,
awake
right?
or
Okay.
aware.
When you're aware of it, do you also associate other practices, let's say yoga
Sure.
or Pilates or
Sure.
Tai Chi, Qigong?
Absolutely. So any practice that helps you be more mindful will help you with the self-awareness, which is the first step. And so one of the tools we use at Portal is the LAVA. Listen, acknowledge, validate, and ask empowering questions. So you're listening to yourself, listening to each other. You're acknowledging yourself and acknowledging each other. You're validating yourself, your own feelings, and hopefully validating each other. But then asking empowering questions. So a really simple empowering question whenever you're in the lower states is, how can I be a hero right now? How can I find more win-win opportunities? And so there's really simple questions that we can ask ourselves, and if you're a parent, ask kids to help them get into the higher levels of power.
And I'm sure this is the follow-up to it. I'm sure that you're going to probably cover this later, or perhaps David or someone else will cover it. But do you also associate certain foods? There are like certain foods that might get you into
Yeah.
I was having a conversation with John earlier
Yeah.
that Brazil nuts are really good for studying before you're going to take
Sure.
a test or what have you, eating them maybe an hour before. And
Sure.
it worked for me and
Yeah.
a lot of other people. So I was just wondering.
Yeah, so I think everybody's biochemistry is unique, and there's such a bio-individualization around food, but we know that food affects our biochemistry. So we absolutely can look at and just do that self-study on yourself. Yeah, thank you. And we do have to wrap, but we'll have a panel as well, so we'll be able to talk. So thanks, everybody. Sure. Thanks, guys. The one that's out right now is Find More Strength, 5 Pillars to Unlock Unlimited Power and Happiness.
And that's in there, right?
Yeah, that's on Amazon. Yeah, and it's in there.
Thank you so much. One more clap for Pam. Let's do like a whole freaking. You are like the definition of resilience, because as the technological dysfunction happened, you seem to get more powerful somehow. So thank you, Pam. And again, to one of the most resilient women I know, you're amazing. All right, let's get on to the next one, who's also one of the most resilient people I've ever met. The next one, as I say. All right. So our next speaker is such an incredible physician, also an incredible person, and I can speak to that from just professional and personal experience. I'm gonna give her bio, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about her, and then she's gonna come up, and none of what I said will be important because what she's gonna say is so much cooler. Dr. Lyon received her doctorate in osteopathic medicine from the Arizona College of Osteopathic Medicine and is board certified in family medicine. She earned her undergraduate degree in human nutrition from the University of Illinois, where she studied vitamin and mineral metabolism, chronic disease prevention and management, and the physiological effects of diet composition. She also completed a research and clinical fellowship in nutritional science and geriatrics at Washington University in St. Louis. Dr. Lyon has her own podcast, which just launched, and it's so amazing, the Dr. Gabrielle Lyon Show. And what I'll say about Dr. Lyon that makes her probably the most unique physician I've ever met is that when we think about the scientific method, we think about not only proving our hypotheses, but disproving them. So Dr. Lyon seeks to not only speak with practitioners who feel the same as her, but also feel the opposite so she can learn from them. And she approaches her entire business with a fierce level of compassion and resiliency. So let's give a massive round of applause for my dear friend, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon.
I think I'm using, hot mic. So applause before I get started means you can all leave. I've done my job. Okay, so I'm doing this without a clicker. So we're just I'm gonna be saying next a lot. Okay, definitely next.
Yes.
Okay.
Here is the clicker, and
All right.
this is to advance.
Oh.
So this button.
Oh, all right, okay. This one.
Yep.
So tonight we are going to talk about protein perspectives, and it should be no surprise that this is a very, very controversial topic. Okay, I wanted to point out here that there's one thing we can all agree upon, and that is health is important. And on the other side, what we disagree on, just about everything. Protein, carbs, fats, calories, fasting, feeding, probably sleeping. So I want you to enter into tonight and this talk with a bit of an open mind. Right now, we have what people would consider to be an obesity epidemic. And if you believe that to be true, then we probably would have fixed it over the last few decades, in my opinion. So is it possible that we have been working under the wrong premise and potentially asking the wrong question? Right now, we're pretty fat phobic. It's all about weight loss, body fat, carbohydrates, yes, cardio, but really what's so important here is that is symptomology. It is a symptom of a different problem. But if we can become muscle-centric, we can begin to actually change the trajectory of how we age. Muscle mass, muscle health, effortful training, protein. By addressing skeletal muscle, we can actually get to the root cause. Missy, Esther, I see you. All right. So right now, this is what we see. This is what you hear in the media, that we're obese. But the reality is we are not overfat. We are under-muscled. If you get this, not only can you help yourself, but you can help everybody around you. So you're probably thinking, although many of you may not be, why are we so focused on fat? And actually, what happens below the surface? And this is a cross-sectional area of a thigh. You can see here, this is what we would consider healthy muscle. This is what we consider old muscle. Okay, you can see like a marbled steak. We've all had a marbled steak. Well, the reality is this does not have to happen. Not only does it not have to happen, but it happens not necessarily in aging, but it can happen in your 30s. Okay? This is what we're seeing happen first. And then we are seeing issues with obesity. Okay, now, if you believe perhaps that we are not over fat, but we are under muscled, then you're probably thinking muscle has a lot of other functions other than looking good in a bikini or mankini. Not that my husband wears a mankini, but if he were, you may question, what's so cool about muscle? Muscle is actually an endocrine organ, and when you contract it, it secretes things like myokines. This is something important to understand, that while we think about it as it relates to fitness, it is so much more dynamic. Okay, muscle-centric regulation. While we think about amino acids, or at least you definitely will by the time you leave, glucose, lipids, these are all foods that you eat. You know, and this is a beautiful picture about where they go, where the glucose goes. But I don't care about that. And you don't really care about that yet either. What you should care about is what happens if you're malnourished. What happens if you are under stress? What do you think your tissue is going to use? These little beautiful red dots are amino acids. And it is going to support your tissues, your organ function, your immune response. Yes, skeletal muscle is an immune modulating organ. Wow. Skin is kind of like the bad news bear to muscle, because everyone says skin is the largest organ. That is not true. And these amino acids support neural function. Okay. Muscle is beyond an endocrine organ, the amino acid reservoir, which is going to provide survivability on everything. It is also your metabolic sink. 80% of insulin-stimulated glucose disposal, which you definitely didn't have. You did not get a big glucose load when you came here. At least if you did, it was not under my watch. Muscle is also important for lipid oxidation. Everyone's talking about fatty acids. Muscle is really important for that. It is the amino acid reservoir. God forbid any of you get injured, your survivability is going to increase because of your muscle mass. And of course, it secretes myokines, which is what I showed you. Hi, Missy. All right. So muscle is actually the organ of longevity. And if we pull this lever, then we can change the trajectory of our health and wellness. And I don't know this guy, but he's pretty studly, right? I'm guessing at least 50, 60. Okay. Before we get to, which is probably one of the reasons you're all here, protein, the reason I highlighted muscle is because do you know what the essential nutrient for muscle is? Protein. Protein. That is the elephant in the room. When you hear protein, do you think controversy? Yes, you do. Plant in the front row, he's supposed to say yes. We hear plant versus animal versus the broccoli and the chicken, and everybody is at war. And part of the reason people are at war, you know, I've been actually studying this for the last 20 years. The Botox is really good. And it was never controversial a decade ago, but it is now. So we have to think about why is that? Okay, let's talk about some basic fundamentals for you. Dietary protein and what's important. Number one, adherence. Are you gonna eat it or are you not? Now you need protein for skeletal muscle, and by the time you leave, you're gonna know exactly what to do. Daily protein intake. Then we get to protein quality, and then we get to distribution, which actually has quite a few nuances, but incredibly interesting. All right, so these are the current guidelines. The FDA, which is, the RDA, which has issued the current guidelines, has told us that we should have a minimum of 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram. Now, when you are sick, does anyone know what the RDA for vitamin C is? Anyone?
80 milligrams.
Close, 60, last time I checked.
Are you saying RDA when you're sick?
The RDA. So no, the RDA for vitamin C is about 60 milligrams. When an individual, let's say, you don't feel well. We'll just say Esther doesn't feel well, or Colleen doesn't feel well. Do you hesitate for 1 second to ingest more than the RDA of vitamin C? You go 60 milligrams, are you kidding? That's like a glass of orange juice. You're probably in the back, like, popping the pills, right? 1,000 milligrams here, 1,000 milligrams there. But the RDA is 60 milligrams. But we don't for 1 second hesitate to increase our amount of vitamin C. But protein, 0.8 grams per kilogram, is the bare minimum to prevent deficiencies. How many people do you hear say, you're eating too much protein? Anybody?
I've heard it a couple of times.
But how is that possible? Why is there such disparity? Does that make sense to any of you? Right? Just from a cognitive level, we kind of missed the boat. So these are the current recommendations. They're wrong. No offense. If anyone was on the current dietary guidelines, you're wrong, okay? And there's a lot of evidence to support this, and people really started having an issue with this in 2009, but again, current guidelines take, the center of the earth is probably gonna cool faster, okay? So you're probably thinking, well, why do we care about protein and, like, what's the big deal? Well, we don't actually need protein. What you need are the amino acids that protein deliver. And there are 20. Of these 20, there are 9 that are essential, which means, I don't care what kind of stud you are, you ain't making it. You must get it from your diet. And I am going to focus on the branched chain amino acids. These are the most valuable in my opinion. And if you eat to optimize these branched chain amino acids, everything else falls into place. So we optimize for skeletal muscle first, and then you meet the needs of every other tissue. Muscle is the organ of longevity. All right. You're probably thinking, well, how am I going to meet those needs? I am going to highlight the most important, in my opinion, amino acid. Again, we need all of them. But if we care about health and longevity, you must leverage muscle. Now, this amino acid, leucine, has what we call a meal threshold response. This means you must hit a certain amount of protein, in particular that amino acid, to actually trigger muscle protein synthesis. Very simply, in order to stimulate your muscle, you must hit this threshold. It is kind of like being pregnant. Either you are or you are not. So either you hit this threshold or you do not. This is incredibly critical to understand, and that is at a minimum amount 30 grams of protein in one full ingestion. If you are eating below 30 grams of protein at that first meal, you are doing yourself an incredible disservice. Now notice, I said that first meal. And we're going to talk about that, okay? Because that actually is the most important meal, surprisingly. So meal patterning matters. This is the standard American diet. How many people had like one egg for breakfast? Don't lie, Alexia. Alexia's my beautiful assistant in the back. I know she had one egg. She probably had one egg and like, I don't know, yogurt. Maybe she's hitting 12 grams of protein. Maybe she's hitting 20. She was sub-threshold, okay? This bar here is protein synthesis, okay? If any of you have your first meal that is a low protein threshold, you do not stimulate tissue. What you must understand is this is a new frontier in amino acid understanding. While not new, it is applicable. Not new in the scientific literature for the last, I don't know, since the 80s. Understanding that this distribution sets you up for nothing but disrupted metabolism. Okay, so most people have a big steak dinner, and now they have stimulated muscle protein synthesis one time. Okay, we are going to correct that behavior. Your first meal of the day, and now everyone is big into fasting, so let's pretend that it doesn't say breakfast and it just says meal one. I don't want to offend any fasters, so I'm sorry. That first meal of the day, actually, so this was some older data. This is, again, from 2009 out of my mentor's lab. And 30 is the minimum. You will actually do better if you hit around 40 to 50 grams of protein that first meal a day. If you take nothing else out of this, the first meal of the day, you're going to have between 30 and 50 grams of protein. If you do that, you set yourself up for metabolic success. And your body is primed. You are in a fasted state. You are catabolic. Yes, that happens. You have now primed your body to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, and it allows you actually to prevent hunger and all kinds of things. So again, this is an unbalanced protein distribution. Does it have to be 30 grams each meal? It actually doesn't. For those people that enjoy 2 meals a day, 50 grams per meal, the first meal and the last meal are the most important. Okay, here's some of your big takeaways. Because I think my clock, I actually have 21 minutes. I was prepared to only talk for 35. Looks like we have a ton of time to answer any questions. So the big picture is protein need per day. How many grams of protein do you need per day? Does anyone know? Oh, you guys like have the cheat sheet here. Okay, close your eyes. I promise I'm not going to make you do like weird breathing, which is probably really good for you. But 1 gram per pound ideal body weight. You start there, and then you calculate, okay, so my first meal of the day is going to be 50 grams. And then the middle meal, I don't really care actually what you do. And then your last meal is going to be another 50 grams. So 1 gram per pound ideal body weight. I did put some of the recommendations for endurance athletes or strength athletes. Notice that actually, I didn't put this in here, but the recommendations for an aging individual is double the RDA. The recommendation for an aging individual, which nobody in here is aging, but if they were, it is actually double the RDA. And there's a PRODAGE study that came out that really discussed that. That's very important to understand, is that we are thinking about protein in a very archaic way. And if we continue to do that, we are going to look for other modalities and other things to help protect our health, which you don't have to do if you nail protein, because protein is responsible for everything that you are. In fact, there's carbohydrates, which are actually not essential. There's a very small amount of essential fatty acids. Protein is absolutely the most important essential macronutrient. You require it, your body turns over. By this time next year, my friend, you will be a completely new person. You will have completely turned over all your proteins. So we must understand that if you hit the needs of a muscle first, by stimulating muscle protein synthesis, by hitting that leucine threshold, all the other amino acid needs are met. So it doesn't have to be complicated. The next picture, number 2 here, is grams per meal. So I've already told you that you need between 30 and 50 grams of protein per meal to stimulate it. Now, the last piece to this puzzle is quality. Yes, it's true, plant protein is different than animal protein. Can you get away with it? You can if you are younger and you have a very voracious appetite or are using supplementation. So quality does matter, and we are going to talk about that. And then quantity. Quantity is the grams per pound ideal body weight. I will say if you are vegan or vegetarian, you're going to actually have to go higher because there's a plant matrix involved, there's a bioavailability issue. And then the distribution. How many 1 meal a day eaters do I have in this room? Fair enough, don't raise your hand. Fair enough, none, not one Peter Roth in the back, 1. Okay, so let's talk about this because this is a really important topic and people will say you can get all your essential amino acids from plants just like you can animals. Is that true? Yes. Is it in the optimal ratio? No. Plants make the appropriate amino acid ratio for plants. Not many of you are flowering here. I'm sorry, it's just not happening. Animals make the appropriate amino acid ratios for animals. That's just the way it is. These are hard, fast, biological numbers. Okay, this is a great paper. I think that so Van Loon is an amazing researcher. He is one of the OGs in the protein world. Now, I want to point out the feasibility of getting 20 grams of protein per protein source. Now, I just told you that you're going to need to go higher, a minimum of 30 grams. And when I said a minimum of 30 grams, I was really talking about animal-based proteins because animal-based proteins are highly bioavailable and, again, have the correct ratio of amino acids. Now, what are you going to do if you're plant-based? I'm not going to hate on you. I have nothing against plant-based people, but let's get some of these numbers right. So if you are going to get 20 grams of protein from an animal-based source, you can do that with less than 1 serving. If you are going to get 20 grams of protein from, say, a little more like legume, soybean source, you're going to need at least two servings, okay? And you can see it will go higher. I don't know why milk is there. It's not true. It's probably because it's casein. But the reality is, if you are eating a plant-based protein, you will likely need 35% more calories. Okay, so I want to highlight this. This is, again, 2.5 grams of leucine. That is what you need. Let's just say that's a minimum. And that is going to be in 30 grams of high-quality animal-based proteins. Or not. It can be in plant-based proteins, especially if you're doing an isolate. But let's just look at this. So to get to that 2.5 grams of leucine, again, if you hit this amount, and no, you cannot take leucine alone, but if you hit this in a whole food source, you will make up all the amino acids. This is a high-quality protein. So for beef, 30 grams will give you 183 calories, and you will stimulate muscle protein synthesis. Quinoa, I get a lot of heat for quinoa. This takes 6 cups of quinoa to equal your amino acid profile. So can you get protein from quinoa? Yeah, you totally can. You are going to be committing carbicide. Tofu actually is a little bit better, like the tofu, but I will tell you there's been a lot of studies and it really takes a much more robust amount of tofu. Again, you know, if calories matter, and calories, by the way, they totally matter. We are not out there hunting and gathering. Some of us might be. I know a couple in the back look like it, but we're just not. So you have to manage your calories. If you are going to eat quinoa and chickpea as your major source of protein, it's going to be a problem. Can you do it? Totally. I expect you're going to be on the treadmill or in the weight room for a long time. So quality matters. Okay. So what are some of the metabolic advantages of protein? With reduced carbohydrate intake, protein is incredibly satiating. It does improve body composition. It protects skeletal muscle, targets fat loss. It increases metabolic rate. You guys have heard about the thermic effect of food. And everyone says, well, it's because it takes a lot to digest. I don't believe that to be true. I believe that one of the reasons that protein is so thermogenic is because it stimulates these processes in the body. And if you hit a correct amount, a more appropriate amount, by the way, muscle is not just an endocrine organ, it's a nutrient sensing organ. Muscle is a nutrient sensor. So when you hit the corrected amount of protein, you stimulate its machinery. And that is one of the reasons why the thermic effect of food, which is the amount of energy it takes to metabolize it, that's how they measured it, is because protein is so valuable. Reverses metabolic syndrome. It can improve cognitive performance, lowers triglycerides in the face of obviously reduced carbohydrate intake. It can improve HDL, increase LDL size, decreases fasting blood glucose. Those individuals that are protein forward are able to stabilize their blood sugar through a process called gluconeogenesis. Your body doesn't need carbohydrates. And it can decrease blood pressure. And there's twofold how it can do this. Number one, by improving body weight, but number two, one of the amino acids is a precursor for nitric oxide, which helps in vasodilation. That's pretty cool. Because again, there are 20 different amino acids. Even though we think about amino acids, or even though we think about protein as one macronutrient, this thing has 20 different amino acids. They all do different biological things. Okay, so the next thing you're gonna ask me is, I am definitely not eating animal-based products because they're really bad for the environment. I just wanted to mention that because I'm sure this question is going to come up. And do you wanna know how I know? It is not because I'm psychic. Do not tell my daughter that. It is because of the incredible narrative that you are hearing. This is from the EPA, and this is the estimates of the greenhouse gas. This was for 2017. So you can see these large, these high bars here. Transportation, electricity, and industry, and commercial residents, meaning where you live, make up 80+% of the contribution to greenhouse gas. Does that blow your mind? Didn't you just think it was beef as the scapegoat? You would be led to believe that. Actually, agriculture makes up 9%. Of that 9%, beef and dairy is about 3.5%. Crop production is 4.8%. What does that mean for you, my friend? It means if you care about the environment and you live in Minnesota, you shouldn't be eating avocado. Okay? Transportation, Michelle, transportation, electricity, and industry. If you care about the environment, take public transportation. Don't fly and probably use candles in your home. But do not say it is because of high quality animal-based products. Don't say that because it's not true. And I also can appreciate this is a very nuanced conversation, but even if it is, we should be able to have transparent conversations. Are you with me? Because the rest is BS. So you guys get to decide what you're gonna do for your health. At least have it be about transparent conversations. All right. Now, I know this is about protein, but you guys are all wondering about carbohydrates, right? It's like leaving out the twin sister. So I wanted to just touch on this for you guys because I want this to be complete for you. This is now, in 2022, a swear word. All right. So the reality is do we have carbohydrate needs or tolerances? Now, the average American eats 300 grams of carbohydrates a day. If you are on the quinoa diet, you've already reached that. The RDA is 130 grams a day of carbohydrates, which actually, is that a correct number? It's probably a little bit higher based on how they determine the RDA, which is interesting because that's probably, they didn't really have a reasonable way in which they came up with it. I mean, they did some calculations, but it's interesting. They made this higher and they made protein lower. Probably because it's much cheaper to get this. Okay, this is a really messy slide, so I think I'm gonna skip over it, but I'm going to tell you that, we're just going to skip over this. Okay. So this idea of carbohydrates, how many of you think about how many carbohydrates per day you're eating? A lot, right? Come on, don't lie. I'm waiting. There's this concept of carbohydrates in a daily intake, but then there's a concept in a meal threshold. We think about amino acids because they have a meal threshold. Well, what about on the opposite side? Is there any risk from having too many carbohydrates at one time? And I would say, if you're metabolically healthy, probably not. But if you want to manage your hunger, manage your insulin, then perhaps what you're really looking to do is understand that there is a meal threshold. And this is what I talk to my patients about. There is a meal threshold per carbohydrates. I don't recommend carbohydrates in that first meal of the day. I think you're much better off doing 40 grams per meal or less to mitigate an insulin response. And that very fancy slide before that was about glucose disposal. Where are you going to put it? Well, if you're not exercising, I don't know. Some's going to go to liver, some's going to go to muscle, some's going to go to your brain, depending on how much you're doing. But you have to understand that there is a meal threshold amount. Listen, I can support this from clinical experience. I think this is a very good way to utilize carbohydrates. And then if you're exercising, you're going to earn it. So if you're going to have over 130 grams of carbohydrates a day, great. Then you should be training. So the other aspect is if I have any endurance athletes, I know I've got some pretty fit people here. Greater than 40 grams per meal is associated with recovery, glycogen repletion. So baseline nutrition recommendations. You earn your diet. Carbohydrate restriction. I do believe in carbohydrate restriction. Carbohydrate threshold. And then protein. Protein, 30 to 50 grams per meal, you will be bionic. I'm just going to mention one last thing, that you were designed to work hard. Just like Pam said, you were designed to be resilient and train and move. So start eating like it. And here's where you can find me.
Thank you.
Whatever they want.
So you do have what?
Hot mic. This mic's on. Do you want me to?
A few questions, and then we're going to do the round.
Okay. What? Whatever you want. Yeah.
But if someone's raising their hand, then you have an extra time.
So, yeah, when you said
We have a mic here for the questions. Whoever's going to ask the question.
Protein quality.
Yes.
So there are some animal proteins are better for us than others, I assume.
Who's
And
talking?
Back here.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And also whey protein, because
Yeah.
I've always heard that's bad.
Whey protein is phenomenal. Actually, a lot of
That's
the.
really good.
So whey protein is actually phenomenal for people, and it actually has immunoglobulins in it, and it has the highest amount of leucine. You could actually get away with 18 grams of protein, and you'll stimulate muscle protein synthesis, and you'll get a robust amount of all the amino acids.
Grass-fed whey protein, or does it matter?
I don't think it matters, quite
Okay.
frankly. I think that when we worry about if it's organic or not, I think that it really limits us. And from a practical aspect, I think that that can be very harmful.
All right, question up here.
Yes,
Mic
sir.
over here.
Hi, so leucine, in order to stimulate muscle,
Yes, sir.
that will stimulate mTOR.
Yep.
So how does this information conflate with Dr. Longo and others in
Wonderful,
the protein
wonderful
restriction
question.
world?
I am so excited you asked that. You're a plant, right? Okay. Meaning he was planted here. So let's talk about. So let's talk about this.
Can you unpack the question a little
Yeah,
bit?
I'm gonna explain it. So one of the things, we never really thought about protein being bad for people before. Until 2014, a paper came out. And this paper came out and it really highlighted how protein stimulates mTOR. And mTOR is a mechanistic target of rapamycin, and it is a growth promoter, not initiator, but promoter as it relates to all tissues. Okay, so people are worried about protein and cancer. Okay? Now, mTOR is actually in every tissue in the body. The brain, the pancreas, the liver, and yes, in the muscle. And the way in which you stimulate protein, the way in which you stimulate mTOR in the muscle is leucine. And you also stimulate leucine by exercise. But in other tissues like the pancreas and the liver, mTOR is much more sensitive to insulin and carbohydrates and overall energy intake. So if you care about mTOR, if you believe mechanistically that you care about mTOR, then you have to care about carbohydrates and overall energy intake. And it makes absolutely no sense that there is a relationship between mTOR and creating issues, especially as it relates to protein. And I will tell you there's another paper coming out to dispute these claims. It has not yet been published, but what actually really happened was they took mechanistic data, and there's a huge database called the NHANES data. And it's just the largest database that we are using. And they cherry-picked some numbers, and then they combined mechanistic data with some epidemiology, and then they came out with this. There is not one human study, not one high-quality human study that connects mTOR, protein intake, and cancer.
All right, we got time for one more question.
I was hoping it was me. My question is for the postpartum mom. So
Yeah.
in the first few days and weeks postpartum, there's a lot of healing going on.
Yeah.
So just curious what your take is on how much more protein the mom would need and what type of protein, and if they get what they
Great.
need in those early weeks, like is that better for
This
the
is
bigger
great.
picture?
Okay, so stand up. So wave to everybody. So this is Melissa Paris, and she trained me through 2 pregnancies. I have a 15-month-old and almost a 2.5-year-old. And Missy trained me before I got pregnant, during I was pregnant, and after I was pregnant. And now you can sit down. She has a Bells Up, which, by the way, I recommend to everybody. Bells Up. You're not planning on being pregnant, right? Okay. So she's amazing. And you guys should all follow her and look her up. I do mean that. And I'm going to answer that question. Protein intake as a woman is going through postpartum, that is another reason why protein intake really needs to be optimized, not only for her, but for breast milk. So she's going to actually need more calories. And I recommend at least 1 gram per pound ideal body weight for her too. And that it's actually probably more important than, I don't want to say it's more important, I'm slightly biased, but it provides a ton of nutrients, and especially in the healing phase, and it's safe. Provides her with iron, all of it. B12.
Cool.
Oh, done. Okay.
Mic on? All right, cool. Thank you so much. That was awesome. So, Dr. Lyon, this is her second time on the show. The first time we had it, she was actually, let's take a seat. Yeah, absolutely. You guys can take a seat. We're going to ask Pamela Gold to come up as well.
I'll take it off afterwards.
So I've been subscribing to Dr. Lyon's philosophy for the past 2 years now, muscle-centric medicine, and I can attest to it. It works. I'm fitter, faster, stronger than I've ever been, and the body comp, the whole thing, that just, it works superbly. So
amazing.
Awesome. So we're going to move into the Q&A portion.
Okay.
But before we do that, we're going to raffle off some prizes here.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
yes we are.
All right. Do you have the clicker?
It's right there.
The clicker. All right. All right. So this is the fun portion of the night.
I'd say so.
Yeah. Let's see if we could advance this slide. No. Can we advance to the next?
Keep looking at Dr. Gabrielle Lyon.
Next slide. All right, so we got a raffle going, and we have a bunch of prizes. The last one is prizes, by the way. So the first prize is Get Peak Mood. So I've used this supplement here. We have Michael Murdoch in the back there. He's CEO and founder of this wonderful product. Why don't you stand up? Stand up, Michael Murdoch. All right, so he made this thing in his kitchen, right, for like 8 years, right? How many years? 6 years. All right. And it helped you with depression. It's helped me. We have also Andrew Vickery here and a bunch of people who have tried this and it really works for them. It makes, in my opinion, it makes you 10% happier. And that 10% can have this compounding effect to where you're just, it just makes you into a totally different person. So I highly suggest it. So for this, we have a winner. Do you have the winners up on there? Sorry, I got it right here. Wait. Oh my goodness. I can't believe.
It's just building the suspense for all of you.
Yes,
Everyone's
can
freaking
you-
out in the audience. No, yeah.
Oh, here it is. All right. So the winner of the Peak Mood is Wendy DeSimone.
Yay, Wendy.
Do we have Wendy DeSimone? Okay, don't worry. We'll meet us afterwards. We'll give you the prize. All right. Next slide. Hit it. Okay, this is Apollo Neuro. And actually, Pam knows a lot about this Apollo Neuro device. I've used it to calm myself. It doesn't track you particularly, but it gives you these vibrations in your, like wherever it is, your ankle or your wrist to make you calm, focused, works great. Do you want to, how about you?
Yeah, Pam.
Quickly.
Sure, it improves your HRV. So there's a lot of studies that basically show the efficacy of these different vibrational frequencies. And so you can choose on the app which frequency you want to target. And I have a lot of clients that far and away, this has been the device that helped them through anxiety, a lot of the tough COVID stuff. So I definitely recommend this, yeah.
Great.
$350 value, and it goes to Dr. Ronald Primus.
Wow.
All right, Ronald.
How wonderful.
Stand up, say hi to everybody. This is Dr. Ronald
Yeah,
Primus.
he's
He's
the
the
best.
travel MD of New York City. If you need any advice on vaccinations or like if you're traveling to another place, how
Also,
to be healthy.
If you have COVID, he's the person to call. Honestly.
Next.
He's the best.
Next slide. All right. Here we have Dr. Paul Vinn, also in attendance here. Well, don't worry, we'll talk about it here. Dr. Paul Vinn is one of New York City's greatest sports physicians, also longevity expert, and he's given away a $250 value red light treatments with NAD or B12 injections.
Wow.
All right, and
Hard
for
choice.
that, let's see here. Do we have a Dawn Larkin in the house? Dawn Larkin. All right. Going once, going twice. All right, we'll find another winner for that. Okay, next slide. Daily Dose. This is amazing, right? So Mandy, is Mandy here?
Mandy.
All right, we're gonna bring Mandy up here
Yay,
from
Mandy.
Daily Dose. She's gonna talk a little bit about this wonderful meal plan that Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, it was inspired by Dr. Gabrielle Lyon.
Programmed by her,
Dawn,
yeah.
please. Take it away.
Yay, Mandy.
Hi, everyone. My name's Mandy Messenger. I work for Daily Dose. We are a prescription nutrition delivery service, so meal delivery right to your door. And we have a meal plan for almost everything. Dr. Lyon has her own plan, protein forward, as you could probably guess. We also have meal plans for pretty much whatever you're looking for. So whatever kind of issue you want to address, check our whole line of meal plans and we probably have something that will appeal to you. Everything that we use in our meal plans is locally sourced as much as we can. Our fish is wild caught, our poultry is pasture raised, our beef is 100% grass fed and finished, and we're really, really committed to super high quality, well-rounded nutrition. So if you haven't checked us out up front, we have a couple samples for you, and we also have cards with a 20% off code on it, so please take one. And yeah, that's that.
Thank you, Dawn. Hope everyone's enjoying the food tonight. It's delicious, right? You guys enjoying the food?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Amazing
Okay,
food.
great. All right, next slide.
Well, you have to say the
Oh,
the big moment.
the big moment.
winner.
Oh my goodness.
And you get a 5-day.
Yes, this
Meal
is a
plan.
5-day meal plan
Wow.
valued at $500. Do we have Nico McLean in the house?
Wow, yeah.
Nico McLean! All
Nico.
right.
Yay.
Congratulations. See us after the show for your
Congrats.
prize. Next slide. All righty.
Okay. This is another incredible biohacking asset to have. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the company Troscriptions. It's a lot of precision dose, pharmaceutical grade, and physician formulated different Tro keys. So this specific one is Tro Calm, which is a blend that you put right into your mouth of kava, GABA, and hemp extract in really high quality and appropriate doses. Extremely calming for the mind, and of course, if your mind is calm, the rest of your body can function more productively and with higher performance. And our winner for this is Brian Villano.
All right. Next slide. I think this. Oh, second to last. All right, physiologic.
Yes, Sean.
Okay. Physiologic.
Okay, cool. Do you know what's in this portrait cover?
Oh yeah, so I'll do it.
Yeah, you'll do it.
All right.
We know physiologic.
Physiologic,
Yeah,
it's one of the best functional medicine clinics in New York City. It's located in Brooklyn, right over the Manhattan Bridge, I think, but Brooklyn Bridge, or yeah. Great place. So we have a sports recovery package. So any athletes out there, this is going to be great for you. It's a $500 value. We have a winner here. It is Neha Baluch. We have Neha.
Oh, Neha.
All right, Neha.
Hi, Neha.
Congratulations. See us after the show. Next slide. Oh, and this is the last one. Okay, this is the last one. It is the priceless dinner with the Biohack the World team. Right? This is
Infinite.
awesome. Like infinitely valuable. We're so cool too. So you're gonna love. All right. Do we have a Lee Hall with us tonight? Lee. All right. Right on.
We'll see you at dinner, Lee.
Can't wait to have dinner with you, brother.
Portal.
Oh, what? Oh, Portal. Yes. Oh, sorry.
We really did save the best for last, I think.
My fault. Sorry. Of course, we're also raffling off 2 introductory passes to Portal, one of New York City's best and brightest biohacking studios. We go almost every Sunday to do infrared sauna, cold plunge, but here is the owner of Portal herself.
Yeah, so the lucky winner gets 2 intro packages. So part of our COVID comeback story is that we have 2 different locations. 23rd Street, the intro package has photobiomodulation bed. You've got the Proteus, which is a functional fitness trainer. You also get the Carol bike, and then you get a recovery of your choice. And then at the 27th Street location, you also get the Carol, you get the Shake and Bake, and then you get the ARX, which is the adaptive resistance exercise, which is the strength trainer that 20 minutes a week is all you need to build the muscle with the protein that you're now consuming. So the lucky winner gets both of those intro packages.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Who is it?
All right, and so the lucky winner for Portal 2 passes is Joanne Zabata. Yeah, Joanne. All right. See us after this show. All right, so now we're going to transition into the Q&A portion. This is where we can continue asking questions to Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, to Pamela, to any of us. We can have just a free-flowing conversation. Yes, did you want?
Is there a difference between land and sea?
Well, sorry. We're going to go right into it. I need to give you the mic, so I'm going to be floating around with the mic. If you have a question, I'll come to you first. If you have a question, raise your hand. I'll come to you, and I'll give you the mic because the mic needs to feed into the live stream. Okay, folks, I'll be with you up front.
All right. I think I'm not the only one with this question.
That's a great question.
Is there a difference between the protein you get from land animals and sea animals in any of the studies so far?
That's a fantastic question. And so there's 5 grams of protein per 1 ounce in fish, whereas oftentimes in chicken and beef, we say it's 7 grams of protein per 1 ounce. So in order to meet that 30-gram threshold, you just simply need a little bit more fish. But great question.
All right, next question. Yeah, okay. Wait, hold on.
Yeah, I just had a question about fasting, what you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
I tend to eat 2 meals a day. Would you recommend I eat 3 and spread the protein between 3, or what's your opinion on that?
You absolutely can eat 2 meals a day. You'll want to hit 50 to 55 grams of protein per both of those meals. And the reason is you'll want to max out and use those meals as an opportunity to protect skeletal muscle. And also you're younger, and there's more flexibility in terms of age. So younger individuals can get away with a bit more fasting and a little bit lower protein, but if you are really thinking about utilizing muscle and really thinking about building it, it's probably not an optimal strategy, but it certainly would protect you. So 2 meals a day is fine.
Two questions. So the first one is, does the 30 to 50 grams of protein per meal apply to both female and male? And then the second question is, I know there's a lot of talk about having 25 grams of protein right after you work out within, I think it's like that 1 hour window. Yeah. Should we aim for that, or is it okay to kind of get protein whenever you can or does it have to be like specifically right after your workout to optimize?
Great question. I'm going to start with that question. And actually the data would support that it's really about a 24-hour feeding window. And as long as you're meeting your 24-hour need of dietary protein, it doesn't matter. Now, there's a little nuance to that because I'm a trained geriatrician, and one of the things that we know is that as individuals age, muscle becomes more anabolically resistant. I had mentioned that muscle is a nutrient sensing organ. And unfortunately, as individuals age, it decreases its efficiency of use. So if you are older, let's say, I hate to throw this number, let's just say 65. If you are 65 or maybe going through some kind of chronic health crisis or possibly a high level of inflammation, then feeding after training would be very helpful because that way you can overcome that lack of efficiency of muscle. So.
Got a question up front.
So how do you feel about like meal timing along with protein rate of digestion, i.e. like having casein before bed?
Yep.
Things like that. Are those like moving the needle, or is it kind of just like not really as important as?
Great question. I just had the incoming president of the International Society for Sports Nutrition on, and he did a position paper. He's one of the lead authors, Chad Kirksick. And we talked a bit about this. And in terms of protein timing, it doesn't necessarily matter again, but in terms of beneficial protein ingestion before bed, there is possibility that that is helpful. Whether, like you mentioned, casein is a slower digesting protein. But again, one of the things that we think about is over a period of time, it's that leucine threshold in the bloodstream. So it's ultimately the amino acid in the bloodstream that either turns on the mechanism or doesn't. But if you are an athlete, which you look very athletic, there certainly, number one, is no harm. And number two, there could potentially be benefit. But I would definitely check out the position paper. Be helpful. But yes,
benefits your HPA axis too, and stabilizing your blood sugar throughout the night.
Great point.
Could also be really helpful
Great point.
for recovery too.
All right, question over.
You said something about skin. Can you unpack that a little bit more?
Oh, everybody says skin is the largest organ in the body.
Yeah.
And if you're a urologist, you might say something else is the largest organ in the body. But I believe that muscle, based on weight, based on 40% of its mass, and muscle, again, we're shifting the conversation, understanding that muscle is so much more than fitness, that it is this endocrine organ in the body. It is a multifaceted organ, and it is the largest.
And can you cite or refer to any studies on aging and the muscle intake? Because I'm just thinking about my own mother.
Yeah.
And her energy has gone down the drain, and I have addressed it with her, but it'll be better coming from someone else.
So there's something called the PROTAGE study, and that's actually it's a position paper from all the experts, the European Working Group on Sarcopenia and Aging, and that is a phenomenal, readable position paper. It's called the PROTAGE.
All right, question up front here. Thank
you. By the way, that was awesome with the presentation.
He's only saying that because he's right in front, so he has to say that, otherwise I'll kick him.
Well, I'm saying it because it's on.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, there are many controversial studies, or I should say they contradict each other. On one side about vegan, or one side about meat, or meat ingestion, animal ingestion, and heart disease. Much of it is associated with heart disease. So in regards to protein in animal products, again,
yes.
as unbiased as possible. I
Yes.
like just, he's getting to know me, so he knows I like just, tell me how it is.
So the
Talk
reality
to me.
is when you look at these papers, we have to understand the quality of evidence. We are in a time before that, when I was in college and when a lot of other individuals, let's say, were getting into academics, we had to actually go to the library and look at the card catalog and then pull out studies. Now we have PubMed. That didn't exist before. What's happening is we're having a massive influx of information that nobody ever had access to before. You actually had to call, get on the phone, and be like, hey, down at the University of Illinois, did you guys hear that they're doing studies? What are they publishing? So what's happened is there's a ton of low quality data that is being sensationalized. And when you look at evidence, I would like to point you to, there's the Annals of Internal Medicine, which it's considered the Super Bowl. It's one of the top impact journals. And they asked that great question. And they said, let's analyze all the evidence. And do you know what they found? That there was no increased risk in animal-based products. We're talking about whole foods. We're not talking about processed foods, which processed foods, whether it's processed beef foods or processed plant foods, it doesn't matter, that there is no association. And in fact, we know that optimizing for protein, like I pointed out, improves body composition. It doesn't detract from it. And then the next logical question is, what would be a mechanism of action? That this one food, that this one macronutrient, if you believe what you're hearing, this one macronutrient is responsible for, I don't know, every disease that exists, all of cancers, the destruction of the planet, I don't know, everything. So from a logical perspective, do you see how perhaps you are being misled? So that is my answer. No, there is no high quality evidence.
Can I answer that too? So there was actually in the past, oh yes, my mic on? Okay, sorry. I don't know if this one's on either, but I'm loud.
Okay.
In the past 10 years, there were 2 meta-analyses done distinctly about saturated fat and cholesterol, which were 2 nutrients of concern distinctly with heart disease, and they found no association with consumption of animal protein in ways of saturated fat and cholesterol influencing heart disease. So those were like, thank goodness for those studies, because they were like, again, there's so many smaller studies that have been done that it was hard to get but those were solid. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for adding that. Speaking about studies and low quality, there's also a lot of studies that have conflicts of interest, enormous conflicts of interest. And I wanted to add to a point that you made. You're right. There is a difference between whole foods and unprocessed and then processed. And I do feel, at least through my experience, I'm not a doctor, obviously, but I've read enough and have educated myself unbiasedly, regardless of what my preference is, to know that there is a difference between them. With that said, in regards to the conflicts of interest studies, I'm not sure if the one that you reference has a conflict. I'm not sure if the two that you reference.
But I think that this is really important. I'm sorry to cut you off. Is there more to add? I want to talk to you about conflicts of interest. You guys want to know about it?
We do.
Okay, so individuals receive funding from different groups, whether it's dairy, which by the way is a commodity, so it really can't say anything, whereas processed foods can make all kinds of claims, and then there's certain commodities. Those commodities like beef or egg or these whole foods are governed under the USDA, as we talk about funding. And they have money that gets provided for research. Because that money is provided, that doesn't mean that the researcher is going to be biased. It is, they are being provided funds, so this, if in fact this is a healthy food, or if in fact this does do good, let's find it out. So I think that there's a lot of confusion when people say, well, it was funded by whatever this is. It really takes away from the quality of the researchers, which it doesn't necessarily mean that, they're not, but also it's to do good science, and we need to have funding to do good science. Now, oftentimes when something is funded by like a commodity, which is I think what you're asking about, the beef industry, it is extremely scrutinized. The methods, the way in which it's done, much more so than say a processed food would be, right? And the data is very transparent. So I think that that's something really important to understand, to actually, while we talk about funding, actually looking at the study, looking at the reputation of the researchers, these institutions.
And on the flip side, you have those documentaries, those films that have come out, like What the Health, and exactly, the science is so shaky, so you have to analyze it from the perspective of are these things that they're showing, is it
Yeah.
truly truthful, right? Are these studies designed well, right? And then, but then with the conflict of interest thing, they were saying that the What the Health film was funded by the plant food industry, and the James Cameron is like really, he made a huge investment into the plant-based industry before he made that film. So it goes both ways. So yeah.
Yeah, sure. I wanted to add that absolutely what he just said, it does go both ways, but I wanted to reference that because I see that as a huge problem. And thank you for distinguishing the difference between high quality research and the funding that's going on, and that should not take away from the high quality researcher and research, the process,
absolutely.
the transparency, and what have you. Thank you.
All right.
I've got a couple questions, but let's focus on one concerning exercise dosage. Dr. Lyons mentioned that as we age, our muscles become more sensitive to, or we need, as we exercise, we can thus utilize our amino acids and our proteins much better.
Yeah.
And with exercise, our muscles become more attuned to testosterone receptors and so on as well. So we have all that going on. And now we have the concept that is 45 minutes a week. Could we exercise? So is that, the question is, are we optimizing and actually building, or are we maintaining?
Yeah.
Like, what is the optimal, this is almost a biohacking world,
Yeah.
is how do we exercise efficiently to stimulate the muscles,
Yeah.
but not, once a week might not follow the criteria to
Yeah.
take the benefit of the amino acids coming in, and then using the air arcs and all these other
Yeah.
things. How do we do that and to do the efficiencies for health as well as performance athletically? What's the balancing act for that? And then comes the question is how to eat 200 grams of protein per day? Anyway, the
That's
first
good.
part is the
Yeah,
exercise
yeah.
balance.
So I can just speak from my perspective. I think efficiency, I think that exercise is highly complex, and it's actually much more of a potent stimulus than diet. And really getting and I say that, as a nutrition person, but the potency and the metabolic adaptation that one can elicit through exercise, resistance exercise, high intensity interval exercise is tremendous. And actually, it's a way to leverage muscle as medicine. Now, your question is, how do we kind of decide what to do? And I would say, number one, you have to talk to a fitness professional, right? You interface with a fitness professional. They've been doing that forever. I have some personal views that some of the things that I recommend for all my clientele, which is different. Not everybody has access to like Pam's machine, which is incredible. It's very targeted, it's very data driven. For the individual that doesn't, I can speak to the individual that doesn't have access to a facility like yours. Getting in one high intensity interval, absolutely necessary. One high intensity interval session will really help improve insulin resistance a week at minimum, right? Again, this depends on your training age, high intensity. For my husband, who is former military, could be, a guy sprinting up and down with 3 kids on his back in like a bathtub. That's high intensity for him, whereas high intensity for me might be, 30-second push on an Airdyne, right? It could be 3 30-second pushes on Airdyne, allowing me to do recovery, but actually putting in that kind of effort for sure once a week. And then the general recommendation, I can just speak to what is out there, and it's 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity. And again, I have a slightly different view than, say, the biohacking community, because I see opportunity as a way to train mental toughness, grit, and fortitude. It's not just about leveraging physical activity, but it's about, sometimes it sucks. And you should embrace that, and that's fun. And then 3 to 4 days a week of some kind of resistance exercise. But I think in aging, one of the most important aspects is you should be prioritizing progress. There comes a point, a time, where individuals do the same thing that they've always done, whether it's be on the treadmill, and they stop prioritizing, are they lifting more? Are they improving their metrics? Because ultimately, as much as I hate to admit it, there comes a point in our life where we do decline. And we have to prepare for that. And the time to prepare for that is not when it's happening, it's before. So.
And just to add to all that, if this is on. So the ARX, the thing about the ARX is that it's computerized resistance training, and you're never holding weight. You're working against and with the machine. Mm-hmm. So it's the safest way for us to hit our max eccentric and concentric loads. if we learn to use the machine and train our nervous system and to allow ourselves to get out of our comfort zone that significantly, research shows that the average person needs between 4 and 8 days of recovery. And so it's once a week training like that for the resistance piece of the puzzle. Now, to speak to the high intensity interval, like you could have this at home, we have it at Portal. The Carol bike uses something called the Wingate protocol. And so it basically gets you that high intensity interval training to get you to glycogen depletion twice, which is the equivalent of a 45-minute steady state jog, but you do it in under 9 minutes. And it's 2 sprints that are 20-second sprints, and it's using an advanced algorithm, artificial intelligence, to max you out in those 2 sprints. So there is tech, but even like you said on the Airdyne, if you don't have the Carol, I tell my clients to go 30 seconds instead of 20 seconds, because our brain will always underestimate what we actually can do. Our brain will tell us to stop way before we have to, so speaking to the grit, doing things that are hard, but training smarter, not harder, especially as we age, because there's other implications about stressing out our body that we don't want to do anything that speeds up the aging process. So we're all about measuring and optimization. We track our body, composition. Making sure that we're maintaining, adding muscle, and that everything's working the way that we expect it to, because just because you're training the way that you plan to train, and you're eating the way that you plan, and hopefully you're sleeping the way that you plan, there could be other things going on in your body that you're not getting the expected results. So that's why measurement is so, so important in all this.
Yeah. I have a question that is just kind of a follow-up to his. How do you get 200 grams of protein a day in regularly, right? So I was watching a YouTube video on protein, and the guy, I trust him actually. He was really thoughtful and he knew his stuff. But he was saying that there's no scientific study that shows that there is a negative response to having too much protein.
That's
if
true.
you're an exerciser, there's no scientific proof of
Even
that.
if you're not, actually.
Even if you're not an exerciser. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Because you have to understand, we have to get our calories from somewhere.
Right.
And if you're going to get it from protein, it's, in my opinion, it's more beneficial. I shouldn't say more beneficial, but there's no downside. 200 grams is a lot. So if you don't, that's in an, can be in an optimal world in my mind, but you have to know what works for you. So for you, making sure that you're hitting at least 2 meals with 55 grams, I'm happy. So now that's 110. I don't care what you do with the rest.
I have another question. And he was also saying that that whole myth of like you eat it and you can't eat a certain amount or too much because your body won't use it and you'll just waste it. But that is a myth, right?
Yeah,
your body will use every single amino acid that you give it.
So you absorb all of it. From a muscle perspective, the system likely maxes out at 55 grams, so there's no muscle benefit.
But there are many other metabolic
other
processes that rely on the amino acids. So
Just to follow up briefly, could potentially the first meal of the day on an empty stomach,
it's the most valuable.
the most valuable, could it be that we just choose the essential amino acid mix and
you need all the amino acids,
and have all the essential amino acids and the other amino acids, even if they're not essential, and just make that into a shake or something?
Totally. You have to understand that the dosing of that, if you see something that has 50 grams of essential amino acids, the body has to make up for all the non-essentials.
The equivalent, yeah.
So it would ultimately be 25 grams. So you would need 100 grams of the essential amino acids. Because you need the non-essentials. If what you're talking about, you need the non-essentials, so your body will generate the rest.
all right.
I have a question for you.
Oh no.
No, I'm not going.
Yeah, okay.
We're being chill tonight.
Yeah,
We're being chill
okay,
tonight.
Go ahead.
So,
by the way, this is a very, very, very good friend of mine. So you might.
Yeah, we can joke
bust
together.
Bust my chops
exactly.
a little bit.
I would never. I would.
I know you would not.
So this is what's so interesting, and you talked about this before. This concept that often when we hear about people having diet issues, the word compliance comes up. And you use compliance in a different way that I'm talking about. When I say compliance, I mean when it comes to like meat recommendations throughout time, the United States, like the people of the United States, have been extremely compliant with reducing meat consumption. And it's really interesting to me because I always think of when we hear people are getting consistently more and more sick with chronic illness, I always assume, not myself, but others assume it's because people aren't listening to the guidelines, right? The guidelines are, like you said, just literally wrong. How is that possible? How is that possible that the guidelines are so wrong?
Well,
conceptually?
So I think that the way in which the guidelines work is you've got a lot of policy in play. It's not just guidelines from nutrition experts. There's a group of nutrition experts, and then there's a group of policymakers, and then they have to think about when they put out these guidelines, how it affects the rest of the World Health Organization. It's very complex and very political. And that makes it incredibly difficult for someone to know what to do. And oftentimes, like for example, you know that they dropped the cholesterol guidelines, I think in 2015, or did they? Okay.
I remember it was.
No, when I was in
I think it was 2000. I don't. Yeah. So I don't remember the exact date, but they dropped the cholesterol guidelines.
Yeah.
Yet you'll go to your physician, they'll still say, like, watch your dietary cholesterol. But that's actually old, and actually they took it, but they actually took that out of the guidelines. I believe that people are trying. I think that there's a lot of play. You have a lot of policy, and then there's a lot of people that make a lot of money when you're eating processed foods, and carbohydrates are cheap. I can't speak because I wasn't there, but I think that we have to understand that eventually guidelines will change. It'll be slow. Yeah.
Back here. Yes.
My question is the 1 gram per pound makes sense when you're within a reasonable body weight.
Ideal body weight.
Ideal body weight. So then if you are not, do you like lean muscle mass, or how do you figure out what's a good formula for somebody who
do you
is
know your
a
lean
higher
muscle
number?
mass?
Do I know mine?
Yeah.
Sort of. I think I'm about 25% body fat, or 25%.
So no.
Yeah.
Right? You don't.
So I
Do
don't.
you know your lean muscle mass? Okay, not you
No, I
guys.
don't. You're right.
Most people don't know it.
Exactly.
It's
So that's
very
why it's like
difficult.
very complicated.
No, so that's why 1 gram per pound ideal body weight is a great place to start. You can titrate up or titrate down from there. And this is actually goes to highlight how difficult and how wrong we are as a society, where everybody might know their body fat percentage, but we have very limited ways of what is your ideal body mass? Like, what is your ideal skeletal muscle mass? You have no idea, because I don't know what my ideal skeletal muscle mass is, and I don't know what hers is. And Alexis Cowan and I, she's a PhD from Princeton, by the way, very smart. It must be very hard to be that much of an underachiever, but we're working on some of this data and putting it together. It is a huge oversight. You go into your physician's office and they go, here's your percent body fat. They don't go, wow, let's look at the quality and quantity of your skeletal muscle. But we are working to change that.
And I just wanted to thank you for your content. I really appreciate it. And I think it's such a good message for women, anybody, just to think about your muscle and start eating protein, and then you kind of have a backdoor way to maybe getting the weight loss that you were seeking all along. And I think it's just a great message, so thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's like getting the cliff notes here. 2 hours. It's awesome. All right, question up front.
So you mentioned the 2.5 grams of leucine threshold to activate protein synthesis.
Yeah.
But do we know how long, once you hit that
Great
threshold,
question.
how long that lasts for?
We don't. So the data doesn't, we don't actually know, and all the studies have been first meal of the day studies. We believe it's about 4 to 5 hours, but nobody knows. That is a great, great question. Which is why the first meal and the last meal are most important, because we have a metabolic understanding as to why that is. The first meal, because you are in a catabolic state, your body is primed to get that muscle protein synthesis, getting your metabolism right at that first meal, you have the best opportunity. And then the last meal prior to going into an overnight fast is also very important. Yeah, good question.
I wanted to ask about the potential of the information being incorrect or invalid. So, for example, I was looking up, B vitamins. I'm like, wow, there's so many B vitamins, but they skip numbers. And I found out, or at least this is what I was taught, that it's because later on science determined that there was a mistake, there was an error. There were minerals, right? Yeah. Okay, so, and that's just one mistake. There have been so many. You mentioned the egg whites and the thing with the cholesterol and the politics. Is there any way possible, and I say this respectfully,
of course.
with gratitude, is there any way possible that the advice and information that you're giving is either incomplete or invalid?
So I think you bring up a very valid point, and we have to look at the amount of evidence. So if it's just my opinion or maybe a handful of studies, but we are talking about 40 years of research and multiple other universities testing these things out. And so at this point, I would say collectively, we can agree upon the way in which the methods have been done, understanding how valuable protein is, understanding the triggers for leucine. I feel very comfortable and confident that this mechanism in humans and animals, based on the quantity of evidence, the body of literature.
In the planet.
Yeah, of course.
Can I speak to, can I also add to you as
Yeah.
The other thing is, you know, Dr. Lyon is not just an incredible public speaker, she's also a physician who's sitting with people and watching changes happen. So it's like when you're in a practice, like I sit with clients, some of my clients have been with me for 5 years, I'm watching, we're measuring through labs, it's like we all become our own guinea pigs when we're working with a practitioner who cares about you. So it's, on one hand, being evidence-based is extremely important and it is beneath all of the work that we do, and on another level, if you're literally watching this happen in real people's lives, it adds a lot more power to it, and it becomes, after a long time, and I've been a dietitian for like 8 years, it becomes predictable things that will happen to people's bodies, because in some ways we're very, very individual. Obviously biohacking is all about individuality, but in some ways there is predictability in the human body and how people will respond, and you've worked with thousands and thousands of patients. And
I want to say one more thing, because I think this is really important. I think we are going to find evidence, though, that is going to begin to come out that depending on, that this is all, and this is my opinion, depending on the cycle of life, depending on where an individual is, we are going to, what I believe to see, is start to see emerging data that depending on what an individual is eating, for example, if a patient is, and this is actually just done in rodents, so we don't know how this is going to translate, but if an individual for an 8-week period is eating only plant-based, eating a very vegan, fiber-rich diet, that their gut microbiome looks a bit like ruminants, and they can actually begin to generate some of these essential amino acids for a short period of time. And that is fascinating, and that is groundbreaking. Again, we don't know if that translates to humans yet, but I do believe what we are going to start to find is that these things are cyclical in nature. There may be benefit to going into protein restriction for a period of time, and maybe that's 3 days every 3 months. These things are very cyclical. But if I don't provide you with the evidence that I know to maintain optimal health, then I am not doing the job that I was set here to do. So this is a baseline, foundational information that you can then leverage, whether you go a month plant-based or you decide to do protein restriction in a cyclical nature. But understanding that there are core fundamental qualities to your plan, you know, it's my responsibility to provide that for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You got a question in the back here?
My question first one is how much? Okay, it is working. What is your take on how much a person that's recovering from injury, their protein should be both female or male, young or old? And the second question is, what do you do when you have a whey allergy? What's your take on like animal-based protein?
So let me address the male-female question. It really doesn't matter if you are male or female, because it is about a leucine threshold in the bloodstream. These mechanisms are the same. It really is based on body weight and understanding that increasing the leucine threshold, whether you are male or female, has the same triggering process. What's my feeling? If you are allergic to whey, then you can either eat real food, or if you wanted to do a rice pea blend, you could. Again, I would only use those for short periods of time because it's highly processed, doesn't exist in nature. You could, there you go, goat milk, great, goat milk. In terms of animal protein, I'm a pro-animal protein person, so that is my answer for that. It doesn't matter. Well, I mean,
maybe whey isolate is actually more manageable.
But if he's allergic to whey,
Oh, an actual allergy, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually had a patient that was allergic. I actually had a patient with alpha-gal. Do you know what that is? It's a meat allergy from a tick. That's like a real thing.
How can you have a meat allergy?
What are we gonna do with that? Yeah, from a tick.
Okay. Question.
They can eat fish.
Was,
but
yes.
quick question. I get it all the time from my patients and in the general population is, how do you refute or where do you tell people to look at when they're concerned with the damage to especially females in terms of their estrogen with whey or soy protein? How do you break that down in very simple, that's not bad for you, or this is what the amount you should be taking in, and how do you
I've just never
delineate
seen
for
any
people?
evidence, I mean, I guess, number one, the first thing you would say is, so if I'm understanding what you're saying is you're expressing concern or your patients are expressing concern because of the estrogen-like activity in soy or pea, is... Yeah, I would, so I haven't seen that to be true. I think that whey is an amazing food matrix that has a lot of benefits. In terms of soy isolate and pea isolate, I do have concerns because they don't exist in nature. We don't know any of the long-term effects. We don't know what those isolated proteins, we don't know all the components to that. So I would recommend that individuals eat whole foods at least the majority of the time.
Yeah, loads of metals.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not against it for short periods of time, but I would cycle through those things.
We have a question in the back.
How many questions do we have?
So I don't know if you spoke about this earlier, but I had a question about the leucine. Like, is there any benefit to like getting tons of it a day, like 30,
No,
40 grams?
definitely
or
not.
Is it really just that 2.5 per 30?
Great question. Number one, no one should take leucine alone. Leucine exists in a 2 to 1 to 1 ratio of the other branched chain amino acids. So two components of leucine, isoleucine and valine, and no one should just take a whole bunch of it. It really should be eaten in discrete meals because of the biological properties of it. So no, and individuals should not supplement leucine alone.
So what do you think? I have this. I'm doing the protein
and one
shake
more
that-
thing.
Yeah.
The 2.5 grams, you could definitely go higher per meal. And that actually would be expressed. So in 30 grams of protein, there's 2.5 grams of leucine. In 60 grams of protein, there's 5 grams of leucine. And the RDA, shockingly, is 2 to 3 grams of leucine a day, which is way too low. Yeah.
So there's no benefit to doing, I'm struggling to do the math, but like doing just a ton of leucine for
Yeah,
that amount of
so
protein.
no, but actually this reminds me of this question in the front who said, how can I get 20 grams of protein? So one thing that you could do is you could eat a lower protein meal, say 25 grams of protein or 30 grams of protein, add 1 scoop of branched chain amino acids on there, and now you've raised the leucine level in the site with all the other amino acids. That is a way an individual who doesn't want to eat 1 gram per pound ideal body weight can essentially leverage branched chain amino acids.
Taking these, I formulated my own protein shakes with essential amino acids, but I modeled it after Ben Greenfield's Keon amino acids because he says that his ratios mimic high quality grass-fed pasture-raised animal protein, right? But it's all plant sourced. So I was taking his Keon supplements for a while, and then I figured out how to make it on my own by buying it online. But it's so hard to do this. Like, you have to be a sleuth to try to figure all this out and how to make it in the right ratios. But you can do it.
You definitely can use a
Absolutely.
plant-based protein source to get the same amino acid profile. I think that can work really well when people are young. But then the question becomes looking at food as a food matrix. You're looking at iron, you're looking at zinc, selenium. And I think that's actually in the next 10 years, that's going to be the next frontier of nutrition, is we're no longer going to be looking at just the amino acids and the macros, but more of the food matrix that exists.
Mhm.
Because essentially we're moving towards just engineering our food.
Yeah.
And that's
Right.
scary, right?
Yeah, and so he also mentioned that essential amino acids is like the Swiss Army of nutrients, and that it's like the perfect desert island food. Like, if you were stuck on a desert island, what would you want? And I would say essential amino acids. He also said some fat and carbs, right? Would you agree with the statement that it's like one of those things that you should prepare, like if you wanted to prepare for the zombie apocalypse, whatever? Just like,
well, we're very well prepared for that, thanks to my husband. For those of you guys who don't know, but yeah, you guys should definitely come over. I think that you need above and beyond the essentials. So number one, I hope I'm never stranded on a desert island. That would really suck. And then number two, yeah, I mean, you need it. It's an essential nutrient.
So
But
that plus, I have that plus whey plus collagen and then a few other things.
I mean, I'd probably just have some steak and
Go back to
a couple berries and maybe some kale and hope they're, yeah.
All right.
David's gone too far into biohacking. He
Yeah.
just wants to swallow
All right.
pills now.
Question over here on the left. And we're coming down to the last round of questions. We're gonna just want to get some people who didn't get to ask questions. This is your moment.
I have a question about the impact of protein on autoimmune disorders, kind of as a response to the question back there, which
Yeah.
expressed that some people have concerns about soy and whey.
Yeah.
And obviously, I have concerns about them mostly because I have Hashimoto's.
Yeah.
And my sort of working assumption is that real food is better. But I was wondering if there's any evidence that protein actually helps manage autoimmune conditions.
That is a great question, and I will tell you, exercise has an impact on autoimmune conditions. There is some evidence, and a lot of, maybe not particularly in Hashimoto's, but definitely in rheumatoid arthritis. When you contract skeletal muscle, it releases these myokines that have a counter-regulatory effect that actually can lower inflammation in specific pathways, which is really fascinating. Where protein can come in terms of Hashimoto's or other autoimmunity is that, number one, it can really help regulate body weight. And that's important because excess adiposity generates low levels of inflammation. So if you can leverage a food to really help body weight, then secondarily, you can hopefully lower the immune response. That being said, I think that there's no one thing, right? There's a genetic, there's environmental, there's a whole slew of other issues, but that would certainly be one thing to leverage. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a diet program called the Autoimmune Protocol, which was established distinctly to support autoimmune conditions and reduce activity. And meat is actually one of the biggest yes on that list. It's a very small food list that should be done for very small periods of time.
Yeah.
The reason is also because if you have any autoimmune condition, and distinctly Hashimoto's I work with all the time, and also have had antibodies in the past, so we're sisters, which is dope. Your body requires a certain amount of protein and the nutrients from meat in phase 1 and phase 2 liver detoxification, which can be a huge, huge piece of that autoimmune puzzle. So when you think about anything food-wise, you have to think about kind of like our health is like a pop weasel. So it's like you pop one thing down, another thing pops up, right? Also, if you're not eating, your calories or your constituents from protein and getting all those vital nutrients from it, what are you consuming it in? Like you said before, Dr. Lyon. So it's like there's a lot, honestly, there's more potential for inflammation from other foods than high quality meat products. So you have to eat, and especially you really gotta eat because you need those nutrients for that liver detoxification, which is essential to reduce autoimmune activity. And oftentimes I'll supplement with the things that you'll find in meat to help support that. So not only is it not harmful, it's very protective with autoimmune activity and essential.
What are your thoughts, Dr. Gabrielle, on nose to tail, eating nose to tail? Do you
Great.
need all that?
Great.
Yeah?
Great.
Eating the lungs, the heart, everything, right?
Gross, but if you can do it.
All right. Question back here.
That's the last question.
Which protein do you prefer for smoothies and shakes?
I think whey protein is the best. Collagen is not a complete amino acid. It doesn't have a complete amino acid. It actually doesn't have a complete amino acid profile. Its PD-Cas score is 0, just so you guys all know. So if you're going to use collagen, please add in another scoop of some other kind of.
Can you name the one you use?
What?
Can you name the one you actually use?
So we use First Form.
Cool.
We love their natural whey.
What was it called? First Form, you said?
First Form.
First Form,
Yeah.
okay. Caught. All right. All right.
No more questions. No more questions.
Yeah, I think that's.
This is going to be the last one.
Thank you so much. I can't believe I forgot this. All right. What is your experience? This goes for all three of you with the alkaline diet.
I'm done with that question. Go
Well-
ahead. There's actually no evidence to support that, but
Okay.
like for real. the alkaline diet, there's no evidence to support that. The body maintains the pH in a very tight manner.
Same for you? Yeah. And same for you?
Oh yeah, if anything, if I were to say on a very conceptual lens, if anything, I'm more worried about people having a more acidic environment to digest food than not, because a lot of the current foods that we have in our climate reduce our stomach acid, and medications obviously reduce our stomach acid and these other things, and we need more acid to absorb nutrients and break down food. So if anything, I'd go like the complete opposite direction from a Ayurvedic and conventional perspective, if anything.
And water. How about water consumption when you're eating protein? So for example, again, forgive me, I don't have the studies in my head right now, but I've been told that when you're eating, that you shouldn't have more than 4 ounces of water for digestion purposes in terms of the nutrients.
Yeah.
Again, that's what I've been told.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't have an issue with it, but yes, I've definitely heard that.
I've also heard it, like, stop ordering water all the time when you're at the restaurant while you're eating. Stop drinking the water because it's going to bloat you and it's going to...
It's supposed to, like, from an Ayurvedic perspective, it like drenches your digestive fire, so to speak, and that's really where I think the information is deriving from, because you really need to be burning hot to break them down. It is always burning, exactly. It is always burning hot, but it depends on the person too. If you're a person who has acid reflux and you're increasing your stomach volume while you're eating by drinking water at the same time, you might be distended and then pushing up, and that could cause reflux for some people. So it depends on what you're dealing with. It's very individualized on that too.
Well, with that, I feel like we've learned so much. We separated fact from fiction today. We found out about all these myths that are out there. Hopefully we learned a whole bunch about how we can improve our own physical strength and training and just to offset sarcopenia, right? I mean, gosh, that thing is terrible.
And by the way, if you guys are interested in learning more about this, I did just launch a podcast.
And what is it, number 11 right now?
The podcast, guys.
And my goal is to bring transparent conversations to you guys. And if you like it, subscribe to it. It is all for you all, and it takes a lot of work to do, but I am really hoping it provides value. It will. Yeah,
yes.
It has. The Dr.
Gabrielle Lyon.
Very original. Show. Very original. I just named it that so you guys could find it. But it's the first guest is a world-class protein restriction researcher. And the reason I did that is because I believe it's really important to have transparent conversations, and so I started with that.
Exactly. And Pam, you have a book coming out this year.
Amazing.
That's okay. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're writing?
Sure. So Timeless and Less Time. It basically, unlike Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, I really feel like I'm the kind of lucky girl next door, who's lived a very, lucky life that I've learned. I mean, I was a microbiology, biochemistry major at Yale, yes, but that was like 20 years ago, and I forgot most of what I learned. But I've been really lucky over the last really 10 years to learn from people like Dr. Lyon and you guys. And so, the first part of the book is kind of the overall philosophy about integrated fitness, the physical, the mental, and the energetic. The second part of the book kind of goes through the hacks that I feel are the most relevant in my life, that I really encourage people to try for themselves, because ultimately it's about this self-exploration, because everybody is different, and ultimately we want to learn to listen to our bodies and try these different modalities out for ourselves and see, because something that worked last month might not work this month, something that works for someone else might not work for you, but to constantly be open-minded and experimenting. And then the third part of the book is the Portal program, the 12-week optimization program that really is the physical, the mental, the nutritional, the sleep, and then what I call the communal fitness that really is the transformation. So.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I can't wait to read it. Love the first one. And I can't wait to go to Portal again. Anyone, if you're into infrared sauna, cold plunge, photobiomodulation beds, go to Portal. We're working out. We're there on Sunday.
Can I do 10 seconds on wellness out really quick? So I just have to say, because I'm very excited about it, that I just launched a new wellness company that helps people to connect with top-notch functional medicine doctors in this area. You also get a bunch of free wellness services, education, the second you sign up. So right now, like this week, for instance, we just launched a free 30-minute medical massage, free chiropractic assessment, free infrared light therapy, and free cryotherapy when you sign up. Membership's $27 a month. It's called Wellness Map. And I'm really hoping, most importantly, it helps us to interact with our doctors when they're not as freaking awesome as Dr. Lyon, to answer the questions that we need to ask. And it's a patient advocacy program to help you, put you in the driver's seat of your health. So I just had to tell you guys while I'm here. Thank you.
All right, and with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming out. I know it's so hard to come out on a Saturday, especially this weekend with all the traffic. You have a lot of choices. Thank you so much for choosing us. There's plenty of sponsored product in the back. Let's have some cool conversations, hang out, and enjoy. Get home safe. Oh, yes, so sorry. Get it off. Get it off.